All right, so I'm going to leave this up. If you're just joining us, please go ahead and fill out the check-in code, the QR code that's on the screen there, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We are here today to talk about professionalism and workplace communication. A lot of you may be heading into your first internship, your first externship, or maybe even your full-time job for our seniors. So we're going to share a little bit about best practices. You'll hear from some folks on the career advising side. You'll also hear directly from some folks in industry and on the recruiting side. So really excited to jump in. Let's start with some introductions. I'll start with you, Raleigh. You're first on my screen. Can you share a little bit about your background and why you are an expert in this area?
Yeah, thank you for having me today. My name is Raleigh Lane. I'm a campus recruiter with Verizon, and my main focus is actually individuals in the business world, marketing, strategy, as well as corporate functions, so HR, legal, corporate security. So I recruit interns and individuals that are looking to kick off their career with Verizon.
Awesome. Thank you. Catherine, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Camilleri, and I am a university recruiter at KPMG. We're one of the big four accounting firms, but we do all types of business-related services for our clients. So accounting, finance, a bunch of different majors is what we're looking for. And I do also recruit for internships and full-time roles for students just starting out. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. All right, Krista.
Yeah, it's nice to meet everyone virtually. Hope you're doing okay. I'm Krista Davis, and I work in career services in the Pamplin College of Business at Virginia Tech. So I work with students every day on resume reviews, job searching, and networking.
Fabulous. All right, and Courtney.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. I am Courtney Hunley. I am a talent acquisition business partner at Otis Elevator. I handle all things early career related. So that is our hiring for our internship program as well as our full-time entry-level roles. And I also own university relations at Otis, and Virginia Tech is one of our sponsors. So I'm excited to be here today.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you all. So I will be moderating today. My name is Hannah Landers. I'm the Assistant Director of Career Services here at Virginia Tech in the College of Business. So for our students who are with us today, please feel free to put questions in the chat as we go along. We would love to hear from you all and what you want to know from our panelists. Otherwise, if you could just stay on mute and we will let our panelists do the talking. All right, we're going to jump right in. I am going to start with you, Raleigh. Can you share some email best practices when talking with your recruiter?
Absolutely. So I think jumping right in is, and I know our topic of discussion today is professionalism and communication, but having a clear and to the point email is a really good place to start. So even if you start with the subject line and moving into the body of the email, I know generally we're speaking with a lot of candidates, and it's really helpful to know where we've met you or what your particular ask is, as we are also juggling multiple priorities, and we want to make sure that you're getting the best experience possible too. So ultimately, I would say ending your or having a clear ask in your email is really valuable.
Awesome. Yeah, Courtney, could you share a little bit of thoughts on this as well? Maybe best practices for subject line and what they should include in their email?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I would say certainly be professional. In some cases, some of the emails that I've seen in the past can be a little bit more casual. So you do want to be very clear on what you're reaching out regarding. So if it's a specific position, maybe you say, sales internship at Otis, or just something that is concise and that we understand, why you're reaching out. And then I would say for the body of the email, certainly do a form of a, welcome or a hello or something, say who you are, kind of like Raleigh said, be clear on kind of where we may have met you, or, why you're reaching out, and just kind of keep it very short. It doesn't have to be long at all, maybe a couple of sentences, and then just kind of close out the email with kind of what the expectation you're looking for. I think those emails are perfectly fine from my stance.
Awesome. Thank you. And Catherine, curious how often students should be following up with their recruiter?
That's a great question. I think if it's post interview or post a recent interaction, I think it's great to follow up pretty soon after and just say, hey, it was great to meet you at Business Horizons, or it was lovely chatting with you during the interview. I think that's awesome. But following up about different things, I think it's great to ask for a timeline on the first initial follow-up email. So then you now know, okay, if she says we'll get back to you in 2 weeks and 2 weeks is up, then you have an idea of when is a good time to follow up again. So you're not bombarding anyone. So I think always asking maybe in the initial follow-up, what is the timeline, or if during an interview, like when should I be hearing back from you, and then know if that timeline is exceeded, that's a great time to follow up and see if there's a new status update.
Okay, perfect. And I know, Krista, we have heard this question a lot from our students, just about, let's say they get hired, but their start date isn't for a while. What are some suggestions you have for staying in contact with their recruiter and their company?
That is a good question, and that's something we hear a lot from students. I would recommend following up with them on LinkedIn, and certainly, like Catherine was saying, don't be too pushy. One email is okay, two would be a little much. So respect that boundary. If they give one to you, if they say, hey, I'll reach back out to you in 2 weeks, respect it, and then follow up with them afterwards. Do some networking, connect with the team on LinkedIn, see what you can find, do your research. But while you're waiting, use that time to keep applying and networking in the meantime.
Absolutely. Okay. What are some communication red flags that you have seen in the hiring process? Raleigh, I'll start with you.
This one, I would certainly say a major standout for me is poor response time or slow response time. So, we're often moving quickly to, we're as eager to get you enrolled as possible, as much as you are. So that's one big thing that stands out, especially if we've established a communication preference. So, I will often say, do you prefer that we email, or is a text, or, through LinkedIn? And so that's a big thing for me is that delayed response time.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't procrastinate. If you have opportunities in front of you and your recruiters are trying to connect with you, reach out to them ASAP. Catherine, I'm going to ask you the same question. Any red flags that students should know about?
I think if I try and be very detailed about different programs or events that I'm throwing. So make sure to really read over those, because as recruiters, we get lots of emails, lots of questions, and it is sometimes frustrating when you're getting asked a question if you just scroll up to the email before and the answer is clearly stated there. So do your research, double check yourself before you go and ask a question that maybe has already been answered and information that's been provided to you. So just try and be thorough.
Yeah, I mean, I hear this too from some of our supervisors of new grads. This is something that we really want to work towards demonstrating in the job hiring process. If you can demonstrate that I'm independent, I can find the answers, that's something that's really going to be looked on positively. So it's a great thing. Courtney, let me ask you the same question, but on a positive side. What are some of the things that you've seen professionally that helps a student stand out in the job search process?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I think just having done that simple research on the company. So, we're not looking for the student to access information that is kind of hard to find, but just kind of anything that is a little bit more basic, or just something that kind of shows that you've kind of done your research on the organization, who the organization is, definitely helps students to stand out. I always tell students, again, we're not expecting you to come in with kind of like years of experience or anything in that regard. So in order to stand out, you will have to kind of show something that sets you apart from another student. Or, I always tell students, try to connect your leadership skills to a particular role if you don't have like that type of experience. So just kind of any way you can find a way to connect with the organization, or even maybe the person that you're speaking with. So if it's, me as the recruiter, or another individual within the organization, those types of things tend to stand out well. And then I think kind of what everyone else said too, just kind of being timely is important. So even if it's as simple as you're having kind of an initial screen with me as the recruiter, just making sure that you are timely, making sure that if you have any any conflicts or anything that arise, just communicating. So, I certainly don't hold it against anyone if something comes up, but the students that stand out, certainly are able to communicate very well in that regard. Just general strong communication, I would say, and then connection to the organization that you're speaking with.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, I have a question today from a student that I'm going to toss towards you, Catherine, that kind of goes from Courtney's comments. How important is the professionalism and soft skills when you're evaluating a candidate? So if someone is extremely qualified, they've got the technical skills, how important is that other piece to recruiters?
I think it can really make a difference between two candidates. One that, if they're both very similar, have the same skills, but one is a really great communicator or has been able to build some really great relationships with professionals while we've been on campus. I think that can lead to the difference between one student getting an offer and maybe one not. So I think sometimes I tell students, like, it's really great. You should attend as many events as you can and make the interview feel like it's more of a formality because you already know the people behind the firm. And so I think that can really stand out if you're able to build some relationships and build a positive brand so that we know who you are when we see you.
Perfect. Okay. Krista, next question comes to you. What are some strategies students should use to handle rejection professionally and maintain motivation throughout the process?
Okay, yeah, I can take that one. I would say the most important thing is understand that while rejection is hard, it is unfortunately a part of the process. So don't take it personally and don't let it demotivate you. Some things that you can do is just send a polite thank you note and ask for feedback whenever possible. Some students might get rejection and just move on and not say anything, but it is a best practice just to reach out and say, hey, thank you for your time. I appreciate it regardless. You can even use it as a learning experience. It doesn't necessarily mean that you did something wrong, but maybe you can tweak your resume to make it a bit stronger. Maybe you could work on your interviewing skills and just kind of celebrate your small wins. Hey, you made it this far. You did a great job, and let's move on, move forward, and keep the job hunting process.
Yeah, that's great advice. All right, Courtney, I'm going to ask you this one. What do you think is the biggest misconception college students have about professionalism in the job search process?
So from my stance, I think, every phase of the process matters. So, that first impression certainly may even have more impact than you getting all the way through to the interview process. So I think students should, again, just kind of always be on their A game from start to finish, no matter kind of who they're talking to or connecting with. I think, again, kind of was already said, but those kind of building those relationships is critical to the process. So if you've kind of built those connections already and you maintain them, you'll certainly stand out ahead of other students. So just recognizing from the beginning matters all the way through to the end in terms of once you even secure the interview or receive your offer. So every phase matters. And like I said, you should, be professional in every phase, including, simple emails or text messages. I know that a lot of recruiters are very flexible on means of communication. I think it was kind of mentioned before. So no matter what mean of communication or mode of communication you're using, just make sure it's always professional.
Okay, yeah, that's great to know because I do know, students have talked to us about recruiters will text them and it's very casual, but the student side should always be professional, always err on that side during the job search process. That's really good advice.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that too, and maybe you can kind of go off of how that person interacted with you as well. But so like if the text was very casual, I mean, certainly feel free to kind of respond in the same way. But still, from my perspective, I always kind of err on the side of caution as the candidate at least. So I would still recommend it no matter what, even if the other individual was very casual. So, but good point.
Yeah, it's like if your interviewer shows up in jeans, you're still going to wear a suit. You're still going to dress professionally, just to be on the professional side. Okay, Raleigh, can you share some of the biggest mistakes you've seen in student emails and how to fix them?
Sure, and I think we've touched on some of this. The biggest thing that comes to mind is formality or incorrect name or addressing inappropriately. That sort of addressing inappropriately. For some reason, on my official communications, my full government name is on there. And so oftentimes I'll receive emails directed at my last name or my middle name, which doesn't bother me personally, but it's something to be cognizant of, to make sure that you're reaching out to that individual appropriately. And then another big thing for me is just grammar and spelling in a world where we have tools like Gemini and AI that can help even formulate your thoughts. It's definitely something to just check back over.
Absolutely. Krista, same question. What are some common email mistakes you see from students?
I would say the dreaded sent by Outlook or sent by iOS. You always want to avoid having a signature like that, or something that doesn't even have a signature at all, because it will say sent from iPhone or something very similar. So just try and keep a good eye on your signature, make it very professional, and use very professional, concise language.
Got another one too. I've seen a lot of, you haven't gotten a response yet. So just forwarding that same email back to the original recipient, generally not the most professional way to go about following up. As Catherine said, give some grace, try to really allow the other individual to take the entire time that they've shared with you. If you really do feel strongly about following up, a separate email to follow up and politely ask for, status update, that's going to be the right way to go about that. All right, so we're going to pivot a little bit and talk about, the professionalism at your first job or your first internship. So, Catherine, I'll start with you. What is some advice on how to build genuine relationships at work?
I think this is a great question, because it can be a fine line. Like, you definitely want to be authentic and show interest in your colleagues and share the things that are important to you, but you still want to also remain professional. I think there is a misconception that professional means you have to be buttoned up and uptight all of the time, and that is definitely not the case. I think when you're recruiting and things, I think it's definitely great to err on the side of caution, like Courtney said, but you also need to be vulnerable and able, in order to build relationships and learn and share things about yourself, to learn about others. So I think you should just really try and communicate, participate in team activities, put yourself out there, try and build some rapport. Because at the end of the day, we're all people. If you get an offer with our firm, you're going to be one of our coworkers and maybe some friends with some of these people you're meeting on campus. So, but you just have to let that build organically and kind of test the waters while erring on the side of staying professional.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, I mean, just it kind of like when you started college, you have to say yes to everything and be positive and get involved. So 100%. Krista, any thoughts there?
Absolutely. I think those were a lot of great points. I feel like you can also just be curious, ask your colleagues about their paths, show interest in their work. I know that relationships are built over time and not necessarily all at once. From a career advising standpoint, you can even offer to help your colleagues out sometimes, not in a pushy way, but in a helpful way. And also just know to respect their opinions and perspectives, beliefs, even their boundaries and their schedules. Don't text them outside of their working times unless you're buddy-buddy. So just understand the professional relationship outside of the personal ones as well.
Absolutely. Those were two really good pieces of advice. So I'm going to ask Courtney the same question. Just keep it going.
Yeah, thank you. I think it kind of goes back to what was said, but develop those genuine relationships. And I think too, with that, so I know a couple things come to mind when you do that. So certainly if you are looking to build relationships with people that are kind of outside of your direct team that you're working with on a day-to-day basis, just kind of make sure you run it by your management or your team to get that permission to outreach, just so that you're not kind of overcommitting if they had other tasks and assignments for you, especially from an intern perspective. But I think they would also appreciate that you're willing to do it. And then I would say if you are going to kind of either volunteer to meet with other teams or kind of, take on maybe assignments or other tasks from other teams, make sure that you aren't kind of over committing and then like under delivering on it. So only take on what you can actually, kind of, afford to do so. So that you can still kind of get the work that you need to get done on a day-to-day basis, and then add that extra in. So I know it gets a little bit exciting. I can think back to my first internship. Like you're just very curious and you're excited, but there's a balance between the two. So just try to find that balance and don't feel like you have to take on everything as well.
Yeah, and that's another common thing I hear is the overpromising. It's not on purpose, but I think what happens is new hires can get very excited about the projects, and there's just this time where you're not fully going to understand what the ask is of a lot of different projects. So take it all in those first few months, support and celebrate successes rather than when you're starting that project, if that makes sense. You can share when something is complete and people can kind of celebrate with you. I think that's a better way to go about that. All right, Raleigh, looking to you, can you share some habits that will make someone appear professional as a new hire?
Sure. So I think starting right out is really preparing and researching. So kind of getting an understanding of knowing the company culture, especially when you're speaking with your recruiter initially. We're happy to share some of those details. It's oftentimes why we're so passionate about our roles. And so getting you prepared for knowing your role when you come into the business. So I think that's a big thing, is sort of like being prepared and using that effective communication as well. So coming in, kind of hitting the ground running, but kind of being aware of what you're coming into.
Awesome. Yeah. Krista, would love to hear any thoughts you have on appearing professional as a new hire.
Yeah, just show up on time or a few minutes early, take notes during your meetings, and ask thoughtful questions if you can. You can even follow up with a thank you note for your supervisor as well, or especially when you're meeting one-on-one with your supervisor, which we'll talk about later. A follow-up note or a thank you note can go really far. Own your mistakes. So if you do have a mistake, it's okay. It's your first day, it's your first week, it's your first month, things happen. Own your mistakes and learn from them. You can also be responsive and be responsive in emails and respond promptly as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, responding promptly is so important. Status updates, even if the project isn't complete, even if you need to ask for more time, communicate that with your supervisor. So important. That's great advice, Krista. All right. So we often hear from our soon-to-be graduates a little bit of imposter syndrome, like I'm not sure how I'm gonna do. And Catherine, just curious, any tips you have for appearing more confident, being more confident, and kind of overcoming that imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think this kind of goes off of what we were talking about earlier. It's just being prepared, doing as much as you can to allow yourself to be prepared. So then when you do have that self-doubt come in, you can kind of give that positive self-talk a practice and say, no, like I've prepared for this. I know what I'm talking about. And if I don't, I know how to communicate and ask the right questions and volunteer that I can do the research to find the answers. So I think trying to come in with a positive attitude and knowing that you have done the work and practice that self-talk are the things that I know a bunch of professionals who are years into their careers who still practice those things and have to work on. So it's not just because you're definitely obviously new to a full-time job or new to a role, like you'll experience that even as you grow. So just start practicing that early on as an intern or as a new hire, I think is key.
Absolutely. And, while we have some recruiters on the call, can we confirm that there is training at new jobs? That's something else I hear a lot. They will train you guys. They're going to train you. You're coming out of a great program for Virginia Tech. So just be confident, and understand that there is still a lot to learn, and that's okay. Courtney, any other thoughts on kind of overcoming that imposter syndrome?
So it was actually kind of what you were just going to say. I was going to say, give yourself grace, know that number one, you got the position, right? So kind of remember the things that you did to receive the position, remember all of the things you're learning in your programs at your schools. Remember that you have, your career centers. Not all universities have it to this capacity, so leverage that. Just kind of remember all the things that you were doing to kind of get you where you were, and then also recognize and know that you will have training. So there isn't something that you don't have to feel like you have to master the job when you come into it. And that's for any professional, even me. Like, now that I'm almost 10 years out of university, I go into a new role. I don't know, I won't know everything from day one. So don't kind of feel like you have to know. I think the people that kind of have more success are the ones that have asked questions through the years, have maintained that curiosity, take notes, all of those different things. So you're coming in essentially a blank slate, but not a full blank slate. So just kind of leverage the tools that you have already, and then know that you'll continue to learn them along the way.
That's awesome. And I think something that kind of you both touched on was sharing, having a voice and kind of being okay with sharing some thoughts and ideas. Raleigh, I'm curious your suggestions, tips on new hires, when they're early in their career, how to be confident and share their ideas, or when maybe to share and when maybe not to share their new ideas.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it is making sure the forum and the timing is correct. So, but the biggest thing is that your leaders want to hear your ideas. Your peers want to hear your ideas. That's one of the reasons that you're employed with us. So, making sure that it is an appropriate time. It's not an outburst in a meeting. It's when the floor is open for questions, or if you're having a conversation about or a follow-up, that sort of thing is also really valuable. But yeah, the timing in the forum is super valuable when it comes to sharing your ideas, but definitely don't be afraid to do it.
Yeah, and just kind of adding on that, I mean, like you said, the timing in the forum is so, so important. Typically, for a really new hire, I would always suggest going to peers or your direct supervisor, because they can kind of help mentor and coach you on how that idea might be doable and where to bring that, and they can support you in making it happen, or maybe kind of giving you gentle feedback if it needs some adjustment before implementation. All right, so speaking of supervisors, Catherine, what should someone be prepared for in one-on-ones with their manager in their first internship or job?
Yeah, I think coming prepared with some of the tasks and things that you've been working on and what you've been learning, and then maybe also some problem areas that you're having. So come ready with insightful and thoughtful questions, like maybe do some research, show that you've tried to find the answer or the solution yourself before just coming with a million questions. Also, I think some students get so eager to ask different questions and share new ideas, but don't forget to turn on your listening ear. We want you to be able to take in that feedback. Don't just ask questions to ask them. Listen and hear the answer so that we know it registers with you. Communicate that you understand what is being communicated to you. So I think, just like always, come prepared, but also just be open to listen and hear that feedback as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And your one-on-one too is meant for you to share the positives and the questions. So just be prepared to kind of make sure that you're sharing a balanced look at what's going on with you, and also bring the agenda. I mean, if your supervisor has topics to discuss, they'll bring those, but a one-on-one is meant to be a shared discussion. So you really should also come prepared with topics as well to discuss. Courtney, any other thoughts on one-on-ones with your manager?
Hannah, you stole mine. I was going to say the agenda. So just kind of make sure you understand what the expectation of the one-on-one is, and then come prepared for it, like you mentioned. So again, if it's weekly, obviously, you will know what you will need to prepare from the week before. If it's bi-weekly, make sure you know what's expected to either have been delivered on by then, or things like that. So I think the agenda is important. And certainly come prepared to speak to some sort of topic, because you don't want it to just be you two just kind of staring at each other in that meeting. Like, you want to leverage that time that you have with your manager, especially if it's limited time.
Absolutely. Okay, since I stole yours, Courtney, I'm going to ask you another question. So let's say you're in your one-on-one and you get some constructive criticism or feedback from your supervisor. Any tips for dealing with that professionally?
Yes. One thing I had to learn personally is, to not take things personally. So I know that's hard. Like, we're human, and, it feels like it's about me, but you have to, like, just kind of remove yourself from it in that moment. So kind of just breathe, depending on if it's face to face or, how the interaction is, if you need to, say you need a moment or anything, but certainly just kind of breathe before, think before responding to anything or reacting to anything. Just breathe, know that we're all human, like we're going to make mistakes along the way. And I think that, that constructive feedback is probably even more important than, getting the good feedback as well. So just kind of, make note of it, see, recognize if it's something that you feel is something you certainly can work on, which I'm sure in a lot of cases it can be. But if it's something that, maybe if it's not something as critical as like making a mistake on an assignment or something, and maybe it's just more of something that your manager has a thought about, you can either, take it or leave it in some cases, but obviously make sure they don't know that you're doing that, but just take it all in and process it, and don't feel like you have to have a response to it in that exact moment or a mitigation to it or something like that. So that's my advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay calm, stay present in the moment. You don't have to react right there. You can take some time to process and bring it back up with your supervisor at another time, and try to implement that feedback too. That's really important. Krista, other thoughts on receiving constructive criticism from your supervisor?
Yeah, you stole a lot of the good ones. So props to you for that. I would say just know that constructive criticism is there to help you. So take it with grace. You can ask them clarifying questions, turn it into a conversation. Say, hey, can you give me example of how I can implement this in the future? And don't take it personally. It's a way for you to grow continuously in your field. So thank you for that, and thank them for the conversation, and just continue to improve.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking out for you, right? If they're giving you feedback, they want you to succeed. That's typically the goal. That's how a good manager will share feedback. All right. So I know we touched on this a little bit, but Raleigh, I'm going to ask you, how should someone go about communicating their successes to their leadership team at their internship or their first job?
Yeah, and this is really great, because you obviously want to sort of evangelize the great things you've done. I think my biggest thing is to sort of frame your successes as contributions, and how they align with the goals of either the project that you're working on or the goals of the organization. Kind of look for a way to link those successes to your future opportunities, and even invite feedback on that, because there could be an area of improvement that we might have missed. So I think that's a big thing, is sort of framing it as how you've contributed as well.
Yeah, I love that. Catherine, additional thoughts on communicating your successes?
Yes, definitely. I think this is great. We want to hear about the way that you're succeeding and celebrate you. I think one good thing to remember is to be humble, and also maybe mention those people and acknowledge the people who helped you along the way. I think that'll also earn you additional praise, but also the people on your team. I know a lot of us in the different industries that we work in collaborate on everything that we do. So letting others know that they deserve some flowers too for the things that you are able to achieve is a good way to also contribute to your team.
Yeah, and actually, we just got a question in the chat that's very relevant to that, Catherine. So I'll just toss this question back to you. Any tips for working in a group? What's the similarities to college group projects, and any tips for kind of managing that?
Yeah, I think going in, and hopefully a manager will start this out when you're on a group project, but knowing what you're responsible for and what your other teammates are responsible for, that allocation of duties and clear communication of that, I think is really key to making sure that the team jives well. And also, it's okay to ask other people like how their working style is. Do they really like to communicate and work together on certain things, or are they kind of a lone wolf and then they show up with their product and then you collaborate at that point? So I think it's good to communicate and know how you work well, and then ask others how they like to work and how they like to collaborate.
Awesome. Courtney, any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I guess I would just echo kind of all those things that were said too, and just making sure again that you're clear on what role you play, clear on what you're expected to do, how who's going to, I guess, lead the group project in some sort of way, and then making sure that you're meeting your milestones, but also still kind of weaving in all the other individuals. And you're always going to be working in a group environment. So even though, you know, in some roles you might feel like you're your own individual contributor, everything that we do on a day-to-day basis contributes to a team. So no matter how you look at it, you can't get rid of a team kind of or group project, so to speak. So just know that it's always going to be there. So just kind of get comfortable with the uncomfortable. But I think one thing that I've also learned is that when you build relationships with people that you're working with, you know, not necessarily, I'm not saying like you have to hang out with them outside of work, but building like personal connections or finding ways to personally connect, a lot more you can find more successes in that way. So if people know you, you understand each other, you know where you're coming from, you'll learn not to take things personally if there's maybe a lack of response, or let's say your coworker isn't responding. If you build that relationship, you can now know how to connect with them to understand maybe something's going on in their personal life, and maybe they're just not responding from that perspective. Maybe they're not just ignoring you. So just kind of all those dynamics, I guess, that were kind of already shared, but then still continuing to develop relationships will be important in those group or team dynamics.
Awesome. Raleigh, curious when a new hire should feel like in a group project, when they should be taking the lead versus kind of sitting back on a group project.
That's a great question. And I think it will be case by case, especially if you've determined the roles, you know, in an initial conversation. I think a big time to step up and use those leadership skills is if you see something or have identified something that maybe is being missed, and it doesn't need to be, you know, it can be just a clear suggestion. Hey, let's think about this particular aspect of this group project as well. Or even if you're noticing maybe some deadlines are not being met, either, you know, offering to work back on how to reabsorb the work or redistribute the work, that sort of thing. I think that shows great leadership skill in that environment.
Yeah, that's perfect. All right, Krista, question for you. What are some key factors that contribute to a new hire's success, let's say in the first 90 days, in those very, very early days of a new job?
Yeah, just all the professionalism standards we've talked about before. Be professional, be on time, and be consistent. Absolutely take notes of your contributions, but like we've said, you don't necessarily need to shout those out all the time. It's important to know when to share those. In team meetings, you can share your contributions in relation to the job specifically. In supervisory meetings, you should be on time, yes, but you should also come prepared with some questions about what you are doing, what you will be doing, ask for some feedback. Also, get to know the team dynamics. That should be something you jump on the first day of the job, but it'll take some time to get to know it throughout those 90 days. So try to be a team player. Jump in when you can, take initiative and show your personality.
All right, Catherine, same question. How can someone stand out in those first 90 days?
I think being known as a reliable professional, even if, like, I know Hannah, you mentioned earlier, it's okay to say like, hey, I need more time on this. That's great, but we want to rely on you to be able to communicate that. So making sure you're able to raise your hand when you need something, and also just deliver the product that you're given. So I think if people know that they can count on you in a team, that is a really great quality that will stand out. And you can do that early on.
Awesome. Okay, so we are coming to the end of our questions. I will keep an eye out for any last minute in the chat, but I always like to end with each of our recruiter panelists just sharing a little bit about how to get involved with your company. So Raleigh, I'll start with you. If students are interested in Verizon, what should they do?
So definitely keep an eye on our careers site, and specifically for our internships, it's verizon.com/campus. There is an early engagement form that you can fill out on there. So, you know, as you all are probably aware, we're very close to summer 2025, but summer 2026 recruiting will start during the summer. So getting engaged, using that online form, it even provides an opportunity to upload your resume. And that way we can start having your information before we even post roles and keep you aware of that as we are looking forward to future seasons.
Perfect. All right, Catherine, where should students go if they're interested in KPMG?
Yes, yes, all of our jobs and opportunities are posted on our website, kpmguscareers.com. So very similar to Raleigh, we have wrapped up most of our summer 2025 recruiting, but summer 2026 is going to be coming very soon. So definitely check out our website for those details. And you can always contact me. My email is very long, but it's my full name, Catherine Camilleri at kpmg.com. So I can get you in my pipeline of students for all the information all about different events that we're hosting on campus and different opportunities we have available.
Perfect. And Courtney.
So I echo exactly what Raleigh and Catherine said. The Otis Career site is where you're going to find the role. So otis.com/careers. We also have our talent community on there as well. So you can sign up, and kind of like what Raleigh said, you can upload your resume, kind of share some of your interests on there so that when we do have the opportunities, we can tailor them to you. But I'm always willing to connect with students. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can send me an email as well. It's my first name dot last name at otis.com. So it's a little long as well. But I'm always happy to connect with students. And obviously, if I don't have an immediate answer, just know that I will be getting back to you, letting you know timelines, things like that. But certainly the same things that everyone said, the career site, the talent community, my email, LinkedIn, all of those different things. So.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. We hope you got some good tips on professionalism and communication. And again, all these folks offered to connect with you. So take them up on it, have some conversations and stay tuned for opportunities from all their companies. All right, everyone have a good evening and thanks so much to our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.